let's talk about COP29. It is unfolding right now. This is the climate emergency conference. You have them every couple of years. This is unfolding as we speak in one of the world's big oil economies, Azerbaijan, the city of Baku. Keir Starmer is one of the few world leaders who's bothered to turn up. Macron hasn't gone from France. Olaf Scholz from Germany hasn't gone. Ursula von der Leyen from the EU hasn't gone. Joe Biden, the President of the States, hasn't gone. Donald Trump, President-elect, hasn't gone, and the list goes on and on and on. So a lot of world leaders are saying, I'm not wasting my time with this. Tell you what has gone, that's 400 private jets, eco-busting private jets. Well, let's bring in my next guest, social and political commentator James Melville. This is very much his specialist area. James, welcome to the show.
Hi, Kevin. You well?
I'm good, thanks, mate. Let me just run through a few of the details. As I say, unfortunately, our Prime Minister has gone, along with net zero nutter crazy Ed Miliband, our net zero secretary. Anyway, just a few of the announcements that Starmer's made already to that conference. 81% emission reduction target. That will be on our 1990 levels. So on our 1990 levels, he wants an 81% carbon emission reduction by 2035. Gas boilers will be banned in all new homes by 2027. And Starmer has pledged yet more money to the net zero project, £200 million to offshore wind companies. Basically, a huge cloud has been cast over this event because the new president of America doesn't believe in what he calls the climate emergency hoax. And without the backing of the most powerful man on the face of the earth, who runs the most powerful country on the face of the earth, all of this becomes somewhat undermined, to say the least. But as I just said, 400 private jets flying into that festival of hypocrisy, which, as always, will achieve nothing. Absolutely nothing. And the president of Azerbaijan addressed the great and the good today, and his opening line was, "Oil is a gift from God." So the host nation isn't exactly committed to the project. But of course, our lot, even though Britain produces less than 1% of the world's carbon emissions, idiot Miliband and crazy Keir believe that if we are made poorer and colder by this net zero mania, then Xi Jinping in Beijing will wake up and go, oh my God, I've got to follow Britain. In America, Trump will go, oh man, I'm feeling so guilty about it. I've got to follow Britain. It's just mad. It's insane. Nothing we can do can make any difference. And yet we have the two biggest fanatics on earth preaching to the converted in COP29. It's just driving me insane.
Yeah, I mean, COP is just a giant jamboree of hypocrisy. It's virtue signalling hypocrisy, where, they travel by motorcades and private jets, tell us plebs to do our bit to save the planet. And meanwhile, the great chieftains of net zero, Keir Starmer and Ed Miliband, again, showing a lot of hypocrisy, are indulging in effectively something that isn't going to make a blind bit of difference, because, as you said, China is emitting more than the rest of the developed world put together. And yet some of the targets and promises and pledges that Starmer said today will have a devastating effect on the UK economy. Once again, it will hit farmers. Well, one of the suggestions is 20% reduction in dairy and meat. Now, bearing in mind some of the news that the farmers received a couple of weeks ago in the budget with inheritance tax, this is putting even more squeeze on a particular sector that's been wrapped around aspects of net zero. We have this whole debate about cow farts and methane, yet this is pointing the country in completely the wrong direction. And what we've got is Starmer and Miliband behaving like the Father Christmas of net zero with all of these pledges, but meanwhile, they're not focusing on the real economy. They're not utilising our energy assets in the round, all aspects of energy. But what they are doing is creating a risk of enormous collateral damages by this net zero zealotry. And I've said this before, what they should be doing and I think the public would welcome it, is to have a referendum on net zero, because the repercussions of all of this on our businesses, both small, medium, large businesses, are disruption, but also the cost to the taxpayer. You've got Ed Miliband spaffing away over a number of years, 22 billion on carbon capture projects. Well, what about the best carbon capture project of them all? Plant loads of trees, not on prime agricultural land, but elsewhere. And meanwhile, talking about prime agricultural land, we have a mass movement of solar panels, mass scale solar panels. Some of them 3,000 or 4,000 acres, the size of north of 3,000 football pitches, that are taking away prime agricultural land.
Not to mention,
the whole thing is ridiculous.
Not to mention, James, more and more of these windmills, which, otherwise known as bird blenders, bat killers. I mean, these are killers of wildlife on an industrial scale. And I'm very worried about that, among other things. Here's what really worries me now, though, is, America now has this new president who will take up the reins on January the 20th. He doesn't give a damn about any of this green claptrap, and he will remove from the shackles of green mania the United States. Their economy is going to soar, bearing in mind they've already got fracked energy, so energy doesn't cost anything in America, and we don't frack because we polish our halos and pretend it's going to cause an earthquake in Blackpool, which it never would. Now we're buying in fracked energy from America, not to mention we're buying all the metals and everything and the windmills from China. China creates these monstrous contraptions by using fossil fuel power from their 1,100 fossil fuel coal power stations. So we buy in all this stuff based on fossil fuels and say, but we don't use fossil fuels. But all this will do is mean that our economy will become impossible for those of us who have to live here. We're going to become poorer and colder, whereas under Trump's freedoms, America will their economy will soar.
Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, two aspects to get ultimate security in the economy are food supply and also energy supply. And right now, this government are compromising both. It's horrendous. They're undermining farmers, but they're also undermining the taxpayer with the amount of money that's being spaffed on this net zero pipe dream that isn't going to make a blind bit of difference apart from the fact they can polish their own halos. But meanwhile, it may well put our energy security at risk because we're not looking at, in the round, all of the natural resources that we are blessed to have on this island of ours. So therefore, we should not be having this energy crisis in the first place. We're importing so much energy. We're not actually even storing traditional forms of energy. And meanwhile, Miliband is talking about raising plans to effectively shelve future pipelines and projections in the North Sea for oil and gas under the auspice, again, of net zero. It will affect and damage lots of different businesses, structures to the economy, supply chains, ultimately make us poorer because our taxes are going up to try and justify this, and ultimately it's not going to make a blind bit of difference, but it will destroy aspects of our economy.
Yeah, and it's frightening, the last point, really, but what really frightens me is, they're selling us the lie, Starmer to say, we're £200 million investment in offshore wind industry. This is our chance to get ahead of the curve of the new economy, the new global economy. Renewables, they're the future. Renewables, they're so cheap anyway. Well, look, one day last week, I think it was last Tuesday, this time last week, because there wasn't any wind and very unusually at this time of year, absolutely no sunshine in Britain, 6% of Britain's power was being supplied by renewables, and by extension, 94% by gas and obviously some nuclear as well. But most of our power, many, many days, because it's not windy and it's not sunny, comes from old school gas. And yet they tell us renewables are cheap. Well, yeah, they're cheap when it's sunny and when it's windy. When it's not sunny and when it's not windy, it's very expensive and it's old school unrenewables. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's also a sunken cost fallacy and sort of false economy, because actually to produce a lot of these renewables, you're having to plunder the landscapes of the planet with a lot of materials and metals to provide the components for wind turbines and solar panels. Take one instance, so it's also not environmentally friendly. If you look at, for instance, one of the components in solar and wind turbines, balsa wood, which you have to deforest large swathes of the Amazon to put that into the blaze. And then you've got the debate on the other side of it. It's the shelf life of wind turbines and solar panels. It's 20 to 25 years. What happens after that? They end up, in a lot of cases, parts of it in landfills on a huge gargantuan level. And then you've got electric cars. You know, the virtue ones who are driving their electric cars with a bit of a battery, which is made from cobalt, which are mined by over 40,000 child slaves in Congo. The whole thing is ultimately a wealth transfer on a huge level to mega corporations, and at the same time putting at threat and risk other aspects of our security, in particular prime farmland, the ability for farmers to farm and produce effectively, and at the same time not providing an effective solution to our energy supply.
I had Rod Liddle as a guest earlier to start the show, and we were talking about this issue, and he said, well, you have to remember that the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, is a moron. Now, he might think that, but I couldn't possibly comment. James, fantastic to talk to you as always. Come on again soon. James Melville there, social and political commentator. What do you make of all this? Honestly, we are being sold a crock, an absolute crock, and it's going to cost us a fortune just so that madman Miliband can polish his halo, signal his virtue and say, oh, Britain's taking the lead. It won't make any difference. We have reduced our carbon emissions by 42%, more than any other nation on the face of the earth. How much more are we supposed to do? It won't save the planet, and yet Miliband thinks that Xi Jinping and Donald Trump will go, oh, look at everything Britain's doing. We better follow their lead. I mean, when were they born? Yesterday? What planet are they on? Planet Zany.